Hey guys, what's up? It's Soup. Today I'd figured I would finally deliver on the spoiler review for Star Wars Dark Disciple by Christy Golden. The reason for that is because I have had a bit of a scattered week as far as content, and the reason for that is because my mind has been pretty scattered. I've been messing around with new editing software and starting new scripts before having finished the previous one, and I just really kind of been all over the place. I had a decent amount of wine, something I really rarely ever drink, and I was thinking, I'm feeling pretty sophisticated right here. Maybe I should do a book review. And before I do any other book review, I figured I should finally fulfill my promise for this one in particular. In case you haven't read the book and you don't want any spoilers, you can check out my spoiler-free video I made about a year ago. So a year later, here we are. The spoiler review for Dark Disciple by Christy Golden. A review which will probably amount to nothing more than me getting upset over the retconning of the expanded universe, and the mourning of the loss of my favorite character from the Republic comic series, and the Quinlan we all used to know. I'm going to try my best, guys. That's all I can promise. Before I get into all that mess, I have to give a bit of a disclaimer. I do not blame Christy Golden for the inherent story flaws in this novel, not in the least. In case you weren't aware, this is already going to be a story arc within TCW before the show's cancellation. And once it was shut down, the writers, obviously still wanting to cash in on the story, handed the script to Christy Golden, all the inherent story flaws and just shitty choices included, and told her, hey, take this and turn it into a novel. And I have read several of Christy Golden's Warcraft novels, and they are phenomenal books. And it's honestly, with what little creative freedom she had with this book, there's honestly hardly anything she could have done to make this a good story. And it's not that I think this novel is a terrible story. It's just a terrible story compared to what the expanded universe had. And I know that makes me sound very elitist, and it makes me out to be some sort of ultimate Star Wars hipster, and that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm very open to the new canon. But the fact of the matter is, Quinlan Vos is a very, very well-liked character in that continuity, and I'm not demanding that these sorts of characters should have the same story behind them, but it just seems like common sense to me that they should be somewhat like how they were in the old continuity. I'm not a very big DC fan, I'm more of a Marvel guy, if that, but this book is like taking Batman when the new 52 came out and having him act like someone else. Yes, Quinlan Vos is still over the top. Yes, Quinlan Vos has his struggle with the dark side, but there was so much more background and motive for these aspects of him than what I can really pull out from this novel, and we'll get more into that, and maybe it has more to do with the actual motive behind his actions than what the EU had. It doesn't seem as organic as it did within the expanded universe, because so much more went on with Quinlan in that, and it just doesn't match up to me in this novel. I will talk more about this throughout the video, but he just does not seem himself to me, and it makes me wonder if Quinlan Vos should have even been in this novel. Why not just make up a new character? Why does it have to be Quinlan? Now realistically, we all know why it had to be Quinlan, because they wanted to cash in on the character. But then it just seems like common sense that if you're attracting Quinlan Vos fans to this novel by including Quinlan Vos, you think you'd have him actually feel like Quinlan Vos. And I'm not trying to say that because it is a featured character that was predominant in the EU, that it should be targeting EU fans exclusively. Obviously, for the sake of Star Wars and for the sake of anyone's enjoyment, I want people to get into Star Wars. But you're asking for massive backlash when you do a character up like that, when you know people are very invested in him or her. Now, he isn't nearly as shallow and just ridiculously stupid as he was in the actual show, but if I didn't know anything about this novel, and Quinlan was given a different name, I would have never thought that he was similar to the expanded universe Quinlan. I would have never, made the connection that they were the same guy. But that could just be me. Now, finally getting to the actual specifics of the book, I have to say that the first chapters, along with the few chapters following that, were really well done. I was reading these chapters and thinking this book is going to be the shit, honestly. Essentially, the novel opens up with Count Dooku killing thousands of citizens trying to flee the war and leave the planet. He orders his armada to just completely destroy them, knowing that the Jedi were watching through a holochannel. So he's basically doing this right in front of their very face. That really set the mood for the entire book, and just showed how insanely desperate the war was going for the Jedi. And the way in which it was described could have not been aired on Cartoon Network. It just couldn't have. It's not particularly gruesome or anything like that, but it was just really, really dark. Probably the darkest thing that has happened in the new canon, besides some scenes from the movies. It was a very emotionally charged scene, and it could have not set the mood any better in my opinion. From here, the Jedi Council convenes, and Anakin is also present for this. And having witnessed such a blow to their morale, the Jedi finally begin talks of assassinating Count Dooku in hopes of ending the war. Obviously, this is very out of character for the Jedi, but after that opening scene, you really get the sense of how the Jedi's morale is just really beginning to degrade, and just how their morals are beginning to degrade. And it was really great to see how all the different council members reacted to a possible assassination attempt. It was also really quite interesting to see how Anakin and Mace Windu both agreed on this plan. And I don't want to get too much into character analysis, well, at least not for these two characters, but Anakin and Mace are both two very direct characters, but their manner of directness is very different, and it was really cool to see how their ideals overlapped on this. What I really don't get is why Yoda would be the one to bring Asajj Ventress into the fold. I get that he usually sees things much more esoterically than the other Jedi, but I do remember that being a bit odd to me. But regardless, this portion of the book was really interesting to me, and it had my hopes set very high for the rest of the novel. From there, we are introduced to Quinlan Vos, and let me say, this novel did a much better job of that than TCW did by a long shot. When we are first introduced to Quinlan, we don't quite know it is him yet. He's introduced as his alter ego for that particular mission, and only a little bit later is his true identity revealed. I was very happy to see that he was still acting as a Jedi Sentinel. Well, you know, the spy type, because there are many types of Jedi Sentinels. But anyways, it was very much in character for how he was usually portrayed, and it gave him proper justice, even for someone who is just learning about the character. Eventually, he receives his mission to return to the Jedi Temple, and we get a glimpse into how much like home the temple is for him. This is a very atmospheric portion of the book, because not only do we get to see how familiar the Jedi Temple is for Quinlan, but Golden does a really great job making it very familiar and homey feeling for us too, and I really appreciated that. But unfortunately, this is where things start to go downhill for me. While I do think that the first encounter between Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress was fairly well done, I could not help but to notice that Asajj Ventress seemed relatively unscathed from the happenings of Dathomir. In case you may have forgotten or didn't watch the show, the Night Sisters were completely wiped out from Dathomir, and Mother Talzin is dead for all Asajj knows, and she does end up dying in the Son of Dathomir comic book, in case you haven't read that. Spoilers, I guess, but I'm sure you know that by now. No, I wouldn't expect Asajj to immediately reveal her feelings about this, but I was expecting there to be a noticeable change in her, whether her becoming more unstable, more violent, or something along those lines. I understand that her life has essentially been one big tragic story, so this wouldn't be the first time catastrophe struck her, of course, but the Night Sisters are the last semblance of any sort of family or souls she had. And I feel like this should have been more profound of an impact, and I really didn't get that, even when they did arrive on Dathomir to train Quinlan. It seemed like the story was so focused on developing a romance between the two that we never really got any sense of mourning from her. And this brings me to my next criticism, the romance. Now, I am definitely not a romance type of guy, but I was really interested to see how this was going to play out, and I have to admit, I was a bit disappointed. If I had to describe the relationship between Asajj and Quinlan, I would describe it to you like your first relationship with your very first girlfriend or boyfriend. I'm talking way back when you were very young, like middle school. Do you remember your first girlfriend or boyfriend and how you were with them, quotation marks, just for the sake of having a girlfriend or boyfriend? That's largely how this romance felt to me, and maybe that's not wrong, considering this is pretty much their first relationship in a way. Asajj having lived the life of a dark side adept, and Quinlan being constrained by the Jedi lifestyle. But just like your first relationship, it felt very forced and not really founded on any good reason than just because. Perhaps it was because Asajj was in a vulnerable position, but we didn't see enough of that in my opinion, and maybe this is supposed to show what lust can do if left unchecked. But the relationship felt like it was attempting to be more than that, and it should have been. That being said, the scenes on Dathomir were very atmospheric, and some of the rituals and traditions Quinlan was forced to partake in were really well done. This reminded me a lot of the novel World of Warcraft Prelude to Cataclysm, also written by Christie Golden. For you Warcraft fans, you may remember that Thrall left for Outland. It was also led into these sorts of tests and traditions by his companion Agra, and the two also began a relationship. I feel like this book borrowed a lot from that, and it worked to a degree, but the whole relationship between the two characters in Cataclysm felt so much more organic, and there was honestly so much more going on in that novel than there was in Dark Disciple. So although I know that there were time constraints within this novel, being a standalone, I do feel like their relationship could have come about in a better way, but I do concede that this is sort of a spur-of-the-moment thing that could also be attributed to Asajj's loss and the two's constraining lifestyles and their escape from that. So perhaps this was delivered as intended, and I'm just demanding too much. The more I think about it honestly, the more I think it's the latter. So finally now, Asajj and Quinlan launch their attack on Count Dooku, and this is where things really begin to get bad for me. Count Dooku secretly orders Grievous to come and help him against the duo, knowing that they're both there, and he's portrayed in the most ridiculous way yet. To prevent Grievous from getting in the way, Quinlan Vos literally locks him in he locks him in a security room. Just let that sink in. This is the guy who at one time was mulching down 6 or 7 Jedi at once, completely rendered incapable and delayed by being locked in a glorified closet. That's just stupid, man. If you've been watching my videos for a while now, you probably have seen my very first video. It's a very bad video, but I have to ask the same question now I asked then. Why does General Grievous suck? I made the point in my Grievous video that maybe he was nerfed in TCW to be more kid-friendly or something, but this is obviously an adult novel, so there is no reason in the world as to why he should be so inept. I'm not going to rant on this any further because I think my feelings on this are pretty well known, but why did Grievous even have to appear if he was just going to be the butt end of a bad joke? Just leave him alone, he's been through enough. Even despite Grievous being delayed, Count Dooku handedly beats them both, and when Grievous finally hauls his stupid ass out of the security closet, his droids overwhelm Asajj, forcing her to retreat, and Quinlan is captured. But even then, that is not the worst part of the novel for me, not even close. Earlier within the novel, with the intention of motivating Quinlan further to kill Dooku, Asajj reveals Count Dooku killed Thulm, Quinlan's former master. I was highly alarmed by this, but perhaps maybe thought it was a lie, or that this event would have been explored in more detail or something. However, Count Dooku reveals in a hologram to Quinlan that it was truly Asajj who killed Thulm when she was a Dark Jedi. This was a great plot twist. But why did they kill Thulm like that? Why? That was an important character. Why not just write in any shitty no-name Jedi instead of Thulm? Just give him a different master. I honestly just wish he was retconned altogether. If you're going to use a character from the EU, make use of them. Make purpose of them. Don't just kill them off for the sake of a couple pages, and a sense of tension for the latter half of a standalone book. Again, this is directed at TCW, not Christie Golden, because it just angers me to think that one of two possible things happened here. One, the TCW creators read the Republic series, and for whatever reason thought that no one would care about killing off Thulm so casually, which is ridiculous. Or two, the TCW creators are not familiar with the series, and I find that very unlikely. Before anyone even says it, I understand, this is the new canon, so I shouldn't expect anything and so on, but consider this from someone else's perspective. The Republic comic series was a series of events that undeniably contributed a ton of new perspective to the Clone Wars, and to know that fans of the series are going to be drawn to this book because of Quinlan, how could you possibly expect them not to take this as a slap to the face? It just seems like common sense to me. Maybe TCW had plans for Thulm, and we're going to explore him further in episodes within the past or something, but considering how Aura Singh was never shown to be a Force sensitive, and Anya Kuro is not even known to exist within the new canon, I highly doubt it. I really appreciate the scenes of the bounty hunters like Boba, and how Asajj begged for their help after she essentially screwed them in TCW. It showed how far she was willing to go for Quinlan, and made it clear how desperate and alone she was. But from here on out, I could not really find anything about this novel I enjoyed. Skipping ahead of this story, Quinlan is finally recovered, but only after having served Count Dooku under the name Admiral Enigma, essentially leading a portion of the Separatists. In a test to see who he's truly loyal to, Yoda has him in a strike mission to kill Count Dooku, which I personally think is a stupid idea. Granted, he is with Anakin and Obi-Wan during this, but I just didn't get the motive behind that, besides, advancing the storyline further. Eventually, through a rather messy series of events, Voss is revealed to be still within the dark side, and even goes as far as to kill 2 of his Jedi companions and a bunch of clones. Finally, he's forced to choose between joining Count Dooku for good, and finding out who the second Sith is, which is a good nod to the Republic series, or remaining with the Jedi. And finally, he fights Dooku and wrecks him by himself. And honestly, it seemed almost effortlessly. He had a harder time fighting Cad Bane in TCW, seeing as he got his ass kicked by him, honestly, than he really did with Dooku. He just gets so powerful out of nowhere throughout this novel. Sure, he had been training with Asajj, but he even defeated her in a spar on Dathomir, while he was poisoned and all kinds of other shit. He just got so powerful, almost inexplicably. But aside from that, Dooku kills Asajj with Force Lightning, as she jumps in the way to save Quinlan once Dooku was believed to have been defeated. I really disagree with this, and I will tell you why. Some would argue it was time to put Asajj away, but I think she would have been a great addition to Rebels. Imagine her somehow coming in the picture, working with the Rebels because she held a grudge against the Sith. Imagine her ruthlessly torturing prisoners of war, indiscriminately cutting through Imperials without any worry of consequence or who's innocent or not, doing whatever she possibly could to defeat the Sith. This would add such a great layer of story to Rebels. It would add some moral dilemmas and some gray into a show that has largely been black and white so far. It would question whether she's going too far, or if her methods, however brutal, are necessary to win a war against such large and domineering military power. I understand it's a kids show, and at the end of the day, they might not be able to do that, but perhaps there are ways to convey these ideas somewhat more acceptably for a younger age, and if not, why not have it be a comic series or novel? While I do think the purpose of her death was effective, and I do think her final send-off was very touching and showed proper respect to the character, I wish it wouldn't have happened. And at the end of the novel, Quinlan is totally pardoned for everything he has ever done, killing 2 Jedi of the Order included, which I find to be absolutely ridiculous. He's literally given a slap on the wrist. That's it. So to finally wrap things up, at the end of the day, this is not a poorly written novel, and despite many of my gripes with the book, it has some really great elements to it that I think are worth reading. While I do believe it is very rushed towards the middle and end sections of the story, and many of the character interactions and developments could have been done a little bit better, I think anyone who's new to Star Wars or not familiar with the expanded universe will actually have a blast reading this novel. But as someone who grew up reading Star Wars Republic and was enthralled by Quinlan's growth as a character, I cannot help but to feel he was mishandled in a very big way, and it would have been better had a new character taken his place instead. I will admit that besides some minor gripes in the use of General Grievous, I would have really enjoyed this book if it were someone else other than Quinlan. It is my past attachments to the previous incantation of the character that prevents me from enjoying it myself. But I do not feel like this novel shows any respect to the fans who enjoy characters like Quinlan and Thulm, and I feel like the killing of Asajj Ventress was a missed opportunity for bringing her in a new and relatively open rebellion era. And on top of all that, the end of this novel had no real consequences besides Asajj's death. We all knew Dooku was going to survive, but Quinlan got off the hook completely, And unless this character shows up in some new novels or within Star Wars Rebels, does it really matter how this all affected him? And will it affect him if he does appear in these other stories? Only time will tell. But now Quinlan is only one of 2 surviving people to know about Dathomir rituals, the other being only a character from an app game. And I would have actually much rather have seen Quinlan be kicked out from the Order and restart the culture of Dathomir in memory of Ventress. It is of course radically different than his old incantation, but at least it's different in a way that's interesting, and adds a new realm of Star Wars to have all the creative freedom it needs. All in all, I think this book needs more stories to spring up from it to be a worthy addition to the new canon, only which can really come in the form of a new story from Quinn the Boss. At the moment it stands, it will be a very fun, yet relatively inconsequential read for someone with no attachments to the old continuity, or Asajj Ventress. But for those of you who have grown up with these characters, it missed the mark in a big way. Thanks for watching, guys. If you made it this far, let me know what you thought of the book in the comments. I am in no way claiming to be unbiased in my analysis here, but I do think I brought up some valid criticisms that would have improved the book for both new fans and old. Again, Christie Golden cannot be blamed for this. I actually have plans to review several of her stories from the Warcraft series, books I think anyone could safely enjoy. Well, that's enough from me for now, guys. Again, thanks for watching, and like always, may the Force be with you.